Welcome gamers and trophy hunters to the second video of this channel. We started off with a platinum journey of Ghost of Tsushima, and now we are on to another one of the best games of all time, Hollow Knight. With Silksong releasing sometime this year, I thought it would be fitting to do a boss ranking of all 47 bosses in the game, and including the lore around each one. Before we begin, please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoy this type of content and want to stick around. With that being said, let's dive into the gorgeous and mysterious lands of Hallownest, with its peculiar inhabitants that dwell within. Number 47, Zot the Mighty. The fact that Zot the Mighty, the fearless, heroic, courageous knight in shining armour, who would sacrifice himself in an instant without a second thought if it meant someone's life was on the line, is considered a boss fight is hilarious. He is found at the end of the first trial in the Colosseum of Fools, and he cannot even damage you as his weapon is made of shellwood. It is just a matter of hitting him over and over so much that I would consider it just downright bullying. Number 46, the Venge Fly King. Venge Fly Kings are the territorial leaders of the Venge Flies, and are natives to the region Greenpath. The boss is found in Greenpath, chewing on Zot the Mighty, and whacking it with your nail causes the king to release Zot and the boss fight begins. This boss is ranked so low as it really is nothing special and is more of a mini-boss. It only has two attacks where it either swoops down at the knight or lets out a screech that spawns in a couple of Venge Flies. This boss is very easy and deserves its place down in the ranking. Number 45, Soul Warrior. Soul Warriors are scholars who have used Stolen Soul to strengthen their abilities in combat. However, their continuation of using Soul after the infection broke out caused them to lose their sanity along with their identity. These guys are recurring mini-bosses found throughout Hallownest, and I can't even consider them a boss and more think of them as a simple enemy you could find traversing through the lands. They are very easy and simple to fight with only a few moves such as dashing or diving at the knight or summoning an orb that chases him. Number 44, Winged Nosk. Winged Nosk is found in Godhome, one of the pantheons, and the boss fight starts with it taking the form of Hornet and transforming into the hideous creature it really is. I'm placing this boss so low on the list because it is just annoying and isn't a fun fight in any way. It doesn't have many attack windows at all, and the most effective way to attack it is when it swoops down and you can do a pogo hit on the top of it. Apart from its constant swoops, it can spawn infected balloons and also releases infection blobs from the ceiling. Not a memorable boss in any way. Number 43, Blobbles. The Blobbles are the much bigger relatives of the Obbles, and these guys are only found at the end of the second trial in the Colosseum of Fools. The Blobbles were raised and trained at the Colosseum with the pure intention of using them to fight the gladiators that take part. Blobbles are lifelong mates and they are extremely attached to one another. As far as the boss fight goes, they basically have one attack, which is where they both spew acid blobs for a few seconds and then just float about until doing it again. When one is defeated, the other one becomes enraged and gets a health boost, as well as a faster acid attack. Number 42, Massive Moss Charger. The Massive Moss Charger can be found in Greenpath, and it is a very simple boss fight. It only has two attacks where it charges at the knight, which can be counterattacked by constantly striking it with the nail, knocking it back over and over. It also has a belly flop attack where it jumps from the ground. Nothing special and very easy. Defeating the boss reveals it to be a group of moss chargers that flee once the foliage is destroyed. Number 41, Elder Hu. Elder Hu is one of the warrior dream bosses found in Hollow Knight. Elder Hu was a sage who was determined to purify the borderlands of Hallownest from the infection. He reached the Mantis village, and after his own plagued mind tricked him into thinking the Mantis tribe were infected, he tried to attack the tribe and the Mantis lords. The Mantis lords end up killing him, and the knight can find a memorial above the gates to the City of Tears. As interesting as his lore is, the boss fight is pretty dull. All Elder Hu does is teleport around the stage and quickly fires yellow rings to slam down on the knight. These are easily avoided and Elder Hu is easily defeated. Number 40, Brooding Morlock. These creatures are violent yet sociable creatures which like to mingle with their own kind. One lone Morlock can be found in the Forgotten Crossroads, sitting in a room with fossilised remains of its brethren. It is covered in yellow spots from the infection, which has also aided in its reason for becoming mad, as well as its sheer loneliness. The Brooding Morlock is quite a simple fight, with attacks consisting of slashes from his arms and shooting infection goo at the knight periodically, or as one big vomit puddle, causing the knight to dash to the other side to avoid it. More of these guys can be found in the ancient basin, far, far away from this one. If only this lone Morlock knew the others were still alive. Number 39, Markov. Markoth is another warrior boss, and was one of the only moths who wielded a weapon. Markoth travelled to Kingdom's Edge, where he would seclude himself and meditate to find out the truth of his existence. Markoth would defend himself and attack any who were to trespass, and this included the knight. Markoth is a relatively easy fight, and also nothing special, but he can be a rather annoying battle. He has a dream shield constantly circling him, which is accompanied by another when he reaches 50% health. As well as these dream shields, he also fires a nail at the knight every second or so, meaning the knight has to always be moving against this guy. Number 38, Fluke Mom. The Fluke Mom is a grotesque looking boss found deep in the royal waterways. Fluke Mom is the mother of all fluke creatures, and her body is used as a nest for her young. The Fluke Mom and her children were also infected and became hostile to anyone who crossed their paths. As far as the fight goes, the Fluke Mom doesn't actually do anything. Young fluke flies fly out of her every few seconds, which instantly try to attack you, but swatting them out the way are simple and then leaves a good few seconds to whack down the Fluke Mom. Her death animation is also just gross. Number 37, Galleon. Yet another warrior dream boss. Galleon was a fierce and brave warrior who claimed to be the strongest in Hallownest, and was determined to prove his might to the Pale King to become one of his knights. The warrior travelled to Deepnest to test his strength, but all he found there was failure and death. As with all warrior dream bosses, Galleon has a very limited moveset, but this one is a bit trickier than the others. Galleon spawns a scythe that slams around the arena tracking the knight, and after dealing a certain amount of damage to him, he will also spawn 2 more glowing scythes. These can be rather overwhelming if left for a long time, as all 3 are just bouncing all over the place. Number 36, Nosk. Nosk is a mysterious, lonesome beast that can shapeshift into anything it desires to lure its prey down to its lair. It usually turns into the victim's loved ones or friends to lure them down. When entering Nosk's lair, you can see all its victims hung from the ceiling, which are all kinds of bugs and vessels. Nosk lures the Hollow Knight to its lair by turning into the knight itself. Nosk is a very interesting and mysterious creature, but his fight is not on par with the lore. He is a very annoying fight, and consists of Nosk screeching and running around the arena and shooting huge blobs of infection, either to one side of the stage or from the ceiling. This results in it being hard to find a good attack window to get a couple of hits in before it jumps around or runs away and spews infection again. Number 35, Gruz Mother. The Gruz Mother is the mother of all Gruzzers. Rather than laying eggs, they keep all of the Gruzzers in their big old belly until they are strong enough to release them all. They use a lot of energy, so they are quite lazy creatures. Even though a few of these guys can be found throughout the game, there is one that is a boss fight at the very start of the game, at the bottom of the Forgotten Crossroads. This big beast is a simple fight, with the mother only having a couple of attacks, such as slamming her huge body around the arena multiple times, and charging at the knight. Upon defeat, the Gruz Mother explodes and releases many of her young, which the knight needs to dispose of. This boss is ranked high even though it is a simple fight, because it is one of the first bosses I ever faced in Hollow Knight, making it a core memory on my first journey into Hallownest. Number 34, Mamu. Mamu is another warrior dream boss. This cute little creature was a protector of the Queen's Gardens, appointed by the White Lady. Mamu was trained, and the lady promised to teach Mamu to fly. Unaware that the Queen would never return, Mamu passed, never being taught her desire to fly. A totem was placed in her memory in the Wild's Gardens. Mamu only has one move, which is to curl up in a ball and constantly fire herself at the knight from different angles. It's like playing a game of ping pong with a nail. I placed this warrior above the others as this is one of the sadder warrior deaths, and I felt bad for Mamu. Number 33, Gorb. Gorb is the 4th out of the 7 warrior dream bosses in this list. Gorb was a mystical creature who claimed to be all-knowing. He would try to persuade those he encountered to ascend with him to another plane of existence, but at some point he died with his remains being buried in Howling Cliffs, where the knight can locate the battle. Gorb will fire a ring of 8 spears in all directions, which the knight needs to avoid, and at certain intervals of health that Gorb has remaining, he will then fire 2 continuous rings and then 3 until he is defeated. Gorb is an intriguing little creature and has an interesting place in his role of Hallownest, nestling him in the middle of the boss warrior rankings. Number 32 and 31, Crystal Guardian and Enraged Guardian. The Crystal Guardian was once a miner who worked deep in Crystal Peak, but due to the infection and the miner losing its mind, its body mutated to being covered in crystal. The Crystal Guardian uses its hand to fire crystal lasers at the knight periodically, and also screeches, causing an effect of multiple laser beams protruding from the sky, which the knight needs to avoid. Upon defeat, the Guardian's crystals shatter. However, the miner is once more reanimated from the infection and jumps up to the room above where the now enraged Guardian can be found. The enraged Guardian is a more difficult version of Crystal Guardian, but still has the same movesets. However, his crystal beam attacks are much quicker and require you to be a lot more vigilant. Enraged Guardian also deals 2 masks of damage instead of 1. Number 30 and 29. False Knight and Failed Champion. The False Knight is the first main boss encountered in Hollow Knight. The False Knight is a simple maggot who stole the armour of one of the 5 knights of Hallownest to protect its siblings from those who trespass. The infection did not cause the maggot to do this, but it did succumb to the infection anyway. The False Knight is a very respectable first boss, and is a perfect tutorial boss that teaches you how this game is going to go. False Knight will jump around the arena, occasionally swinging his huge mace around, making boulders fall from the sky. Each time he receives a certain amount of damage, the maggot will fall out of the suit a bit, to which the knight can then strike him a few times before he slithers back in. After defeating the False Knight, his corpse can be found in the room above the boss fight, with 2 maggots weeping over his corpse. Entering the dream world of the False Knight with the Dream Nail allows you to then fight the Failed Champion, the much harder version of False Knight, with faster moves, shockwaves from his mace attacks, and the Failed Champion also deals 2 masks of damage. I included both variants of this boss back to back because they are very similar. Number 28. God Tamer. God Tamer is the final test at the end of the last trial in the Colosseum of Fools, and is a formidable foe who has trained his beast to fight with ferocity and valour, and they are recognised to be the deadliest combatants as well as the oldest in the arena. Dying to this guy is probably the most upsetting death in the game, considering the last trial in the arena takes so long to actually complete. However, saying that, God Tamer isn't actually that difficult of a boss fight, and defeating the beast first before the Tamer actually ends the fight, with the Tamer dropping to his knees and forfeiting. The beast only attacks by rolling up in a ball that is at that moment invulnerable to the knight. The beast also has a spitting attack that spews a load of infection that needs to be avoided. God Tamer itself doesn't really attack apart from jumping at you every now and again. I do love the look of these guys though, and it makes it that extra bit intense when it's at the end of the trial. Number 27. No Eyes. No Eyes is another one of the warrior dream battles, and is found in the Stone Sanctuary. No Eyes has quite a disturbing and tragic backstory, and is as follows. No Eyes was a warrior who came to Hallownest, who was also brought to madness from the infection. In her mind, she was terrified that dreams would infect her mind with the light. From the madness within, she decided to take out the eyes of various bugs and also herself. At some point, she passes away and is laid to rest in Stone Sanctuary. After the knight finds her with the Lumafly lantern equipped, she can still sense light and they battle. The only attacks No Eyes have is by summoning agitated spirits to fly across the stage and attack the knight, whilst No Eyes teleports around the stage. Upon defeat, she realises the knight meant her no harm, and No Eyes and her spirits go to where the infection cannot harm them any longer. Number 26. Umu. Umu is a jellyfish-like creature who protects one of the 3 dreamers, Monomon the teacher. Even though it has also been mutated by the infection, the being still has its intelligence. Umu uses electricity to attack the knight, such as a lightning chain that follows the knight around or fills the room with lightning bolts that the knight has to dodge. The boss cannot actually be damaged until Quirrell comes in and saves the day, and breaks its defense, allowing the knight to attack its soft core. In Godhome it is slightly different as Quirrell doesn't appear, but instead you have to use an Uma to explode on Umu, destroying its membrane, also allowing the core to be hit. Number 25. Zero. The final warrior dream boss takes its place at the 25th spot on the list, being no other than Zero. I love this boss's design and lore. Zero was a warrior of Hallownest who believed that his strength and experience would follow with greatness. However, as the majority of inhabitants of Hallownest, he also fell to the infection, and in his state of madness he attempted to fight the Pale King. This led to him being executed and buried in the resting grounds, with his tomb being a not so gentle reminder to not betray the king. His battle, as always with the Dream Warrior bosses, is a simple one. Zero shoots nails at you periodically, and upon hitting 50% HP summons 2 more, and it is a back and forth of dodging his projectile, getting a hit in and repeating. Overall though, this was my favourite warrior dream boss fight and deserves its place above the others. That's the first part of the boss ranking, so make sure to like and subscribe to stick around for part 2. We are now getting to the best bosses and of course the best soundtracks.